Today, folks, the entire world is headed toward AI operational efficiency. And as mentioned before, I think it's going to lead to what is going to be a complete recap or a reconstruction of the entire idea of capitalism as we know it today. And now I'm being obviously hyper parabolic for entertainment purposes, but I really want to show you today how all different levels of industries are being affected by robotics and AI at this current moment in the market environment. What that leads to ideas around investing, as the market has been extremely volatile this week. And I've never seen such heated comments in my comments section in quite a while. So, take this with a grain of salt, but this stuff is super cool. There's just so much crap happening from space to even YouTube. And I'm going to share with you that today. Like if you want to create an AI generated version of yourself or posting to your YouTube channel in your likeness, you can do that today, and people are doing it. But we'll start off with probably the most talked about story this week. Everyone has been going on about, OpenAI kind of doing this collaboration with Figure. If you haven't seen Figure, I abbreviated to it, but we'll just kind of watch this real briefly and just kind of discuss it, because I think people are over exaggerating the capabilities of these robots today, but still cool and sci-fi nonetheless. You guys haven't seen it? Fascinated.
Hey, Figure One, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great. Can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
This multitasking is fascinating as well.
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's
real
the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
Processing. Here we go.
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
So if you haven't seen it, you kind of get the gist of it. This is a really quick, very cool 2-minute video. And then he ends up asking it like how it assesses its situation and does it feel what it just did. I'm gonna get a quick little anecdotal idea right here.
All right. So how do you think you did?
Processing.
I think I did pretty well. The apple found its new owner, the trash is gone, and the tableware is right where it belongs.
So the biggest problem with this right now that I see is that it is so largely over exaggerated. It's kind of like Boston Dynamic robots, like in these hyper controlled situations. Like if you could tell this robot, hey, like I'm going to make some crazy IKEA like situation and just make some fake warehousing situation that looks like an apartment. And I'm going to tell this robot, I need you to go to the kitchen. I need you to take the dirty dishes out of the sink and put it in the dishwasher. We are nowhere near close to that kind of efficiency with these things yet. It's cool that we're at the level we're at today. This is obviously astounding, but it's just showing the trajectory we're headed toward. I think this is like the future we want, that like big companies are working on because of the realities that this is going to be able to face. I still think if I had to make, like if I'm pinpointing a prediction on this, I don't think we're going to get to those kind of levels probably till about 20. I'm going to say it's 2 or 3 years. Like I think we'll get to the level where these things will be doing real work by 2027. But by God, we are not there yet, right? But what we are there yet on are anything that's really software based that doesn't require, all these actuators, moving parts. I mean, there's so much stuff that goes into making a humanoid robot function at a human level. Like it all seems fairly like it's at that. It sounds like an adult, but it's probably acting more like an 8 to 10-year-old, right? Like if it's in front of the dishes, you explain what the dishes are, and it's programmed and like it's learned the AI models to do so because someone probably physically trained it to, then that's where we're at. Because even Tesla's robot, it's showing folding the shirt. Somebody's manually inputting that still, right? Because they have to build the data sets. Very complicated. The government needs to put a law into place that forces companies to pay the government the amount of the money it would have costed them with paying the person's job. Yeah, so as we take a look at some of this stuff here, I just want to keep in mind that, like, I think because, in this kind of recessionary environment, there's still so much job opportunity. People are losing their jobs. We're seeing a bit of a tick up in unemployment, but there's still a lot of other jobs out there that you can do. There's still supply slumps and everything from like working for Amazon. Like, I mean, there's opening there's jobs opening in a lot of different companies still for certain things, or you can go do the gig economy stuff like Uber Eats or whatever. I mean, there's still so much job opportunity. So what's going to end up happening is operational efficiency is going to start to skyrocket. Fewer people are going to be able to output 3, 5, 10x the amount of value, because we're seeing it in our own business right now, companies that I work for personally. But what's going to happen is that operational efficiency is going to start getting weaned out, because I have to manage the AI. Eventually, I'm not going to have to manage it. And with very little input, it's going to be able to give me a lot of output. And that's when you're going to start seeing the job loss happen. And I don't know when that happens, but just to give you a pure example, like this is the best example, because I think this isn't being implemented into our work yet. I don't even want to talk about this with my boss, because God knows we'd implement this if we could right away. I just don't think we're there. But just listen to this, because this is mind-boggling to me.
AI personal brand YouTube channels will explode. We all know AI is getting crazy. We've seen a gazillion faceless AI YouTube channels out there. But AI is coming for those of us who use our real face and voice as well. For example, I have a friend, over 100,000 subscribers, who has a personal branded YouTube channel. So his face and voice is on screen during the videos. And yet for the last 6 months, all of his talking headshots were generated using AI. For the last couple of weeks, his voice has also been generated with AI. And I'm not going to reveal his identity because he's been doing this secretly, but you can see around about here on Social Blade was when he started doing all this. And you can see how much it's helped his channel grow. Now, some of you might be thinking, I would never watch an AI generated creator. I would easily be able to tell the difference between AI and a real person. Well, what if I told you that the last line you watched in this video was actually generated using an AI voice and an AI avatar of me? I'll be curious to know how many of you could tell the difference down below. Okay.
So that is obviously the most mind-blowing crap. And he's using a software that you can look up. There's a couple of them. There's one called HeyGen. They basically make very similar stuff. And I pointed out some ones like Synthesia, but these ones actually allow you, some of these will allow you to actually adopt your own personality, your own voice. And we're seeing that work into scam artists, right? Like scammers are calling into people pretending to be people, you know, obviously just taking their voice and adopting it into the software. This is the stuff that's just, you know, eventually all companies are going to be able to get their CEOs to be self-represented, and they could probably just get somebody to manage output of content. Like this is the stuff that's horrifying, because this is where I think we're going to start seeing the destruction of social media, because right now, most people have been able to go online, start these businesses. Like I'm a small creator and I can make a living off this as a small creator, but I think we're going to get drowned out by a mass amount of output of content, and the capability of making, you know, making growth possible as a just small-time creator is just going to vanish. Because I think I ran this, I showed you guys the stats before, that there's something like 86 years, it's something like 700,000 hours worth of content is being uploaded every day to YouTube. Now imagine how much that's going to 5, 10, 20, 50 fold over the next decade. It's just going to be insane, the amount of content that is going to be driven, because people are going to be able to output so much more with a lot less work and input, right? Like I probably don't even have to sit here as a talking head. I could probably get AI to help generate some of that, right? So let's talk about Amazon, because I think Amazon is probably the best example. And same with like the car factories like Tesla or GM. Like if you ever go to Ford's factories, Tesla's factories, they're all using robotic arms. And these are like real robotic situations that are being utilized today. They're a lot more efficient. They're easier to program. You know, you're not talking about robots like on the road with cars moving at 90 kilometers an hour that, you know, have to deal with so many different variables. These things are usable today. And I don't think people are aware of how much Amazon has been upgrading their factories with robotics. I mean, just take a listen. We'll show you a few clips from that.
From robots to artificial intelligence, Amazon says it's revolutionizing the way consumers get their orders. It comes as e-commerce sales are predicted to grow at least 10% this holiday season, reaching $278 billion, according to Deloitte. Amazon alone estimated to deliver 13.5 million parcels each day.
And it's all about innovation. I'm inside Boss 27. This is a state-of-the-art facility just outside of Boston. And with me now is Amazon's Chief Technologist for Robotics, Ty Brady. Ty, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So this is the first time the public will see some of the new technology you are rolling out for the holidays. What happens in a lab like this?
We are reimagining the future of robotics so that you can do your holiday shopping even better.
Today, Amazon launches Sequoia, its brand new robotic system in Houston. The company says it's capable of stocking merchandise 75% more quickly and delivering your orders 25% faster.
What was the problem you were trying to solve with Sequoia?
We want to offer a wider selection for our customers. We want to do that in a very efficient manner so they can pass on a low cost to our customers.
Brady says Sequoia also makes it safer for employees, reducing the number of
So
accidents.
the thing is people don't realize that this is so much more boring. It's so much less clickbaity. These videos get so much less views. I mean, that robot by figure has like, what, a couple million views, I think, at this point. And this video is 4 months ago and it barely has 90,000 views. But these are the operational efficiencies that are happening today, right? Like, these are the things where it's going to slowly start incrementally affecting, you know, all of our lives. Because if you worked at Amazon, all of a sudden now this robot's 75% more efficient than the humans were probably doing the job. And this doesn't even get into the fact that, you know, Amazon is building their own humanoid robots. I really wouldn't classify them as like full humanoid robots. Plus, you've probably seen these little things that are super cool.
Day, the finished robots.
You know, these little things we're driving around everywhere and picking up, and like, you know, they just document and put stuff everywhere and pick it up and bring it back over when someone orders or needs crap delivered off these shelves. Here's the robots we were discussing.
New bipedal robot can grab and move orders in warehouse spaces not designed for humans.
I love the way
I
they
think something a lot of people are curious about is what happens between the time they click buy now and the product arrives at their doorstep. You're going to walk me through that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm going to buy what is a bestseller on Amazon right now.
All right, very good.
The Instant Pot. It's going to be hot this holiday too.
Be hot, right on your phone, ready to go.
Okay, I'm going to add it to my cart.
By the time you did that,
Yeah.
I've sourced every Instant Pot inside our network to figure out what's the best way to bring that to your house.
The system found my Instant Pot at a fulfillment center in Penns Grove, New Jersey.
That's
From
great.
there, it was driven to Carteret, New Jersey, where it was boxed, labeled, and loaded onto another truck, headed for a distribution center in the Bronx. That's where the delivery van picked it up and dropped it off the next day at 6:48 p.m. to me.
Yeah, I wish they showed more of the intricacies behind that. I was really expecting more robotics and a little bit more animation, but a little less animation, a little bit more in factory like. But still, you get the idea. Like, every company, everyone's looking to chase the stuff as fast as humanly possible right now. Talk about farming. I brought this up briefly yesterday, and I think farming is the most intriguing because, you know, it's one of these jobs. And like I said, my biggest fear in the economy right now is that once robots, or robotics in general, and AI and even software gets to the point where it costs less than it would cost to hire somebody in a third world, which, you know, you can hire people in impoverished countries for pennies on the dollar. It's almost disgusting. I mean, this is why companies like Apple, when you get into the $1 billion range, like, things, you're always playing in a gray area, and Apple's not going to hire employees in the US to build you know, iPhones and stuff like that. They're going to ship it out to India and China. And it's kind of got a, you know, this weird feeling behind it, because it's like Apple just doesn't want to pay Americans. It's just taking away American jobs. But what happens when Apple starts figuring out how to use, you know, robots to actually start building iPhones on a manufacturing scale that costs as much as their factories in China and India? I mean, that's when stuff starts getting really scary, because it's not just like a Western problem. It's a global problem all of a sudden. Like, all of a sudden, like, real jobs are going to be, you know, and this is just crazy. I mean, look at this. Like, this is so cool. Look at these drones that are picking apples. And farming is like a huge job for, you know, so many countries. And this stuff looks expensive. There might be some upfront costs, but at the end of the day, if it's going to cut your, you know, paying 30 or 50 employees down, you know, I don't need to watch too much of this because there's so much. There's this one too, which is really cool. Like, you know, a lot of people have to go out and spray. Like, this is kind of removing the idea of using some chemical sprays and stuff to get rid of weeds. Like, this thing lasers weeds out of the grounds, and it's also all computer. This thing's just going over the plants and just, oh, there's a weed, zap. Like, how crazy is this? Most, like, farming combines, they're all GPS operated. Sometimes, you know, you're supposed to be sitting in the combine when it's cutting, but obviously, you know, I'm sure people are finding ways around that. I mean, you know, lawnmowers, all this like general stuff already exists. It's just funny how people just aren't fully aware of how fast all of this stuff is coming. With AI, I think that we could end up getting items delivered in about the amount of time if we were to drive to the warehouse. So I think it's funny because Amazon, you know, we always joke about this because some people have Prime. I don't have Prime. Like, sometimes we're joking, you need to use the family's account when you order because Prime, it gets there quicker. I never pay for overnight shipping. But the funny thing is it doesn't matter what level of shipment I pay for on Amazon. It always seems to show up the next day or within 3 days. It always tends to show up quicker than the time it tells me. So I don't think Amazon really cares. I think they're trying to do the same thing with all packages. I could be wrong, but maybe that's just me. A lot of this gets really hilarious too, because, you know, I don't know how far-fetched some of this was, and you got to take it with a grain of salt when it comes to Elon Musk, but there was a lot of controversy around these jokes that, you know, woke AI like Google Gemini can even kill people, warns Elon. And there were a lot of people running in a bunch of different directions with this. And obviously, I think it's can be a little over-exaggerated, you know, it's saying that woke AI cautioning against the implications of programming artificial intelligence with a focus on forced diversity. Everyone's so annoyed because, Obviously, I think if you just let the internet run free when it comes to AI and like machine learning, that me and my buddy were joking that like nobody wants to see themselves in the mirror, right? Like nobody wants to see the reflection of society. I know there's a lot of misogyny, a lot of disgusting stuff that happens, especially when you go to you go to places like, I've been to Brazil. You go to some of these places where crime rates are huge. You go to like, if you even grew up on YouTube and the internet in the old days, you saw a lot of weird crap, like a lot of horrible, disgusting stuff, a lot of scamming. Like nobody wants to see a reflection of that. So obviously, like all these machine learned algorithms today are coming through a filter of individuals that are programming this stuff. And Google, obviously, the woke idea of things really was a bit more progressive than it probably should have been. But that's the scary thing, right? Like it'd be interesting to see if people just let AI take full machine learning out of the broad scope of, even torrent like internet, like just get the raw reality of everything that goes on online and see what it spits out when you start asking it to do things. And I'd be so curious to see what results we get over some of the stuff that Google's generating now. With Elon saying that like, this stuff's going to kill you, it's going to become racist, reminds me of my buddy. I always yell at Siri when she screws up or she just starts talking to me randomly. My buddy's like, you just got to stop being mean to her because she's going to remember. And eventually she's going to remember everyone and what we're doing, and she's going to hate us. Like, I don't know if we're getting there yet, but I mean, you never know, right? Give it 50, 100 years when AI is a little bit more sentient. On that topic as well, like this comes into the controversy, and a lot of this is around investing in robotics, which, when you're investing in things like Tesla, you're kind of getting the insanity that comes with Elon Musk, which you never know how much of it is it a joke? Is it a meme? Is he serious? It's the internet. I don't like taking things too seriously. And I'm glad I grew up in a time where if we understood the internet wasn't a serious place, because I'm sure if all the comments on Twitter and all these YouTube posts and all this drama, if you could just see the age beside them, you'd probably take the comments a little less seriously. But then again, you guys commenting in my comment section these days over Tesla and me investing in it have gone off the freaking rails. When it comes to investing in electric vehicles, everyone thinks is dying, but the Model Y is the best selling car, sedan or whatever globally in 2023. And, they're now increasing the prices of cars, which is an inverse from the lowering of prices of cars. And we don't got to talk about the Tesla story and the infrastructure and all that jazz, but in really cool tandemness here, if you do appreciate the insanity of some of Elon's companies, it was really awesome if you watched the rocket ship, what is it called? The Falcon Heavy. I don't even know what they're calling it now, but if you watch Starship there take off, oh my God, I would have loved to see it. I mean, there's people driving around and all the windows were rattling and they're like, what the hell is going on? And Starship, this thing is like the size of 3 Boeing planes slapped together, and this thing made it into space. I don't think it made the re-entry. I think this was what they're calling a failed mission. I think there's a CNBC thing here I thought was really cool.
There were some positive moments, but SpaceX says its mega rocket Starship failed to complete its third test flight.
I hate CNBC because they make it out like, oh, what a failure. And then this lady comes on and she's like...
Well, even what we're just saying there, Nicole, in terms of what you deem as success can sometimes be up for debate. But maybe start by taking us through some of what happened today.
Watch this.
Well, it was a success.
Thank you. It's like everything I've been hearing about this stuff is so negative. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They put this massive machine in space. I'm like, how long it took them to get to this point? I'm like, how many rockets had to blow up to get to this point, and the efficiency that they've been able to create. Oh, it's so funny.
Ignites its engines while
this is where robotics and AI is going to start playing a role, because there's no way they're going to send humans to Mars. They're going to send robots first. I mean, this is another kind of one of these emerging things that'll happen with more space travel. But to see the size of this thing, if you've ever seen like the comparison of a person standing next to this, it's effing insane. Like, it's some of the coolest shit, and no one, like, how many views does this have? I mean, I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. Yeah, I don't think anyone's talking about this right now. I've hardly heard any social media guys bring it up. And hate or love Elon, this is like some of the coolest crap happening today. Yeah, I think if SpaceX IPO'd, I think it would give them so much funding. I mean, they're still using Starlink, right? And I know Starlink has been a huge success. My buddy has it right now, and he lives up in northern Canada, and he's been saying that, it is affected by like heavy snowstorms, but all in all, he says he's kind of blown away by living, 20 hours in northern Ontario. from Toronto, like 20 something hours up north. Like he's surprised at how efficient it is, because he says he can get up to like 400 or 500 megs down, which is, what I'm pulling here in the city on like connected wire almost, or not connected. I'm a wireless laptop, but I'm sure the connected wire would be like 1.5 gigs, but still 500 is absolutely nuts. I can see it being very possible. I will have to give Elon some credit for making a reusable rocket. Yeah. It's just crazy, right? So speaking into some comments, and we'll get into the investing side of this, and we'll talk about the portfolios here, because some of you guys had some questions about mine and my fiance's combined portfolios, but I'd rather not be alive to see the apocalypse. How do these companies expect to make money when nobody has jobs? So this comes into that conversation with Wally, right? I said yesterday that, there's that quote that Elon said, that there's that Chinese proverb that may you live in interesting times, and these are of the most interesting times, but if you understand the trajectory we're on, it's horrifying. It kind of takes us back to socialism, really, where you're going to have some form of universal basic income. The few are going to control the many, whoever owns all this equipment. And there's only going to be a few companies, I'm sure, that at scale, unless the government breaks them up and intervenes, which they're not now. I'm surprised the government isn't intervening today, because it is largely happening now. But honestly, like, I'd still rather be alive as well to see the apocalypse, which is how Elon deals with the existential crisis of what's coming. And we know what's coming. Like, this is why I'm saying, like, it's so important to get ahead today in life and get invested, get diversified, get yourself in a position where you're not as reliant on your job. Because if you're 18 to 20 years old today, you're screwed. I'm sorry, for the vast majority of jobs, like, unless you're getting into construction or really hyper specific things, you're basically screwed. Even in my business, like, I'm shocked at how AI has taken away so much of the complexities of stuff that we used to have to do. And now anybody can do my job. Whereas before you had to have some technical skill in understanding companies and balance sheets and breaking things down. And now these programs we're using do it all, and they make a video for you in the process of it. And again, it's not perfect. It's like having an intern. She does most of the heavy lifting, but you still got to kind of tweak it here and there, right? But still, like, yeah, there's going to be an inflection point, I think. And I don't know if it happens in the next 10 or 20 years, but there'll be an initial operational efficiency. Output's going to go through the roof, and then it's going to come margin expansion, where all of a sudden companies are like, we don't need people here, we don't need people there. And I don't know if it's going to be like the 80s, where, yeah, maybe we might have some new creative jobs that come about to fix it, but I don't think it's the case. I mean, we were talking about it in the porn industry. Like, the porn industry is going to get wiped. It's going to be one of the first things gone very soon. Say goodbye to OnlyFans. Eventually, you're going to be able to type in any celebrity you want, in any kind of fashion you want. And it's like, it's such a big industry that like is a huge portion of the internet, and it was like the #1 search thing ever. And it's just going to, like, that's gone. That's like, boom, out. Anything like YouTube related, I'm going to be able to make any content based off my likeness. Anybody that's had anything in the past, we've seen that with George Carlin, that really controversial comedian show this guy put together using AI, and that was brilliant. Like, oh my God, if you didn't see that, it's been wiped off the internet now. And it was just raw beauty of, like, all these people that are dead are going to come back to life. All news anchors are going to be gone and useless, because AI is going to be able to update news in real time and have people animated talking about it. Like I said, it's so extreme that it bothers me that people are just not aware of the cusp of what we're sitting on, right? So it's coming. If you're only in your 20s or 30s right now, you're going to see it in the cusp of our lifetime. I'm glad that I'm not going to have to live long enough to answer the real questions. And I'm hoping that, like, the entire financial system doesn't collapse either, because it's going to be weird. It's going to be fascinating. And capitalism isn't going to be the same. I've wasted my time on chasing attention, cats, acquiring adversities and MBAs for so many years. And then I ended up having chronic myofascial pain for almost 3 years, misdiagnosing my condition, and I was unable to work. I am so pissed for losing 10 plus years full of opportunities in stocks and cryptos. So yeah, this is another fear too, right? Like, people put so much effort, they'll put 5 or 10 years into their education, and that scares the hell out of me, depending on what you're going for. And I feel horrible for you that, you had to go through this pain after this education that prevented you from working and capitalizing on all that experience. And hopefully you're able to do it now and excel and get a higher paying job than you would have without it. But yeah, this is something that I always debate. Like, if you're going to pump 5 years into an education and 50 or 100 grand of debt, I mean, you could have just worked for that 5 years, invested, and probably knocked 10 or 20 years off your retirement goals, right? And now you got to be super hyper careful about the jobs you're going for. But life's not fair, unfortunately. And I feel bad for people that end up in these situations, because I've been very privileged, but again, not perfect. I was 20, 30 grand in debt when I was like 18 or 19 years old. I didn't pay it off till I was 23. And I only started investing when I was 23. Could you imagine if I figured this out when I was 18 or 19? I'd have been way better off as well. But unfortunately, it's just not fair. So you kind of got to start planting the seeds when you become aware and realize everyone's on a different time schedule. F me, Kevin. I'm buying Tesla shares on Monday. So am I. Probably not the best thing. I've debated this. I don't think people should be buying a lot of individual stocks. I kind of just use this as entertainment value. We'll take a look at my portfolio in a second. And I think people don't actually look at the books. I've been seeing comments, and I'm not going to call people out for their stupidity, but it's not, Tesla's balance sheet is not as refined as people think it is. I think Tesla's business is going to carry it in the decades beyond value that we're seeing today. That's just my perspective. Again, my perspective, I'm not saying I'm right by any metric, but I don't think people understand that Tesla's balance sheet isn't nearly as great as it once was either. I mean, people are like, they have $60 billion in cash. I'm like, where? On their December 31st ending, they only had $16 billion in cash. They only had 49 billion in total current assets and about 106 billion. Basically in total total assets, right? They're sitting on $106 billion. That's great. They have 43 billion in total liabilities. You minus that out, they're sitting on about $60-70 billion in assets. That's not cash. Like, there's $60-70 billion in assets, not cash. I mean, they got 16 billion in cash, right? Like, their balance sheet for the money that you're paying for a $500 billion company today, it's a lot for a company that's only generating, cash flows of about 14 billion. But considering in 2021, they were only generating 5 billion. And again, this is all debatable. I'm not going to get into it. You take it as it comes. If you believe in Tesla, great. If you don't, you do not have to buy it. A lot of diversity out there. And we'll talk about some of that diversity because some of you are like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I just keep buying SCHD, VYM, Realty, WPC, and Starbucks. And that's great. I don't think people realize you don't need to be buying tech companies to get to retirement. You don't need to be buying tech companies to take advantage of AI. The fact of the matter is AI is going to be working its way, and all this computer and all this crazy stuff is going to get into every business. It's going to get into the financial system. It's going to get into the oil sector. It's going to offer operational efficiency across the board. So if you're just buying traditional companies, which might be smarter, I mean, that's the path Warren Buffett's taking, as I'm sure Berkshire, it's going to be neat to see if Berkshire on their next quarter starts selling Apple. I wonder if they still hold the same conviction. I think Apple's got a long runway ahead of it still. I think it's expensive today. So I'm hoping that leads to a correction because I'd like to buy more. But hey, just cost average the S&P, you get all of it. And hey, if it gets underweighted, you don't have to worry about readjusting your portfolio, and you get the best of the best companies when they're doing the best. I mean, it's the passively weighted system is so brilliant that it still works so efficiently today. But yeah, I don't think you have to take it that seriously. If you want income, I own a huge percentage of SCHD, and I've been getting reamed out. We're going to talk about the portfolio, but we'll do one more comment because this is just too funny to me. I can't get so many people have been so, up in arms about the content I'm making these days. It's funny, but he says, in the last 6 months, I've watched your videos. If all you did was say NVIDIA and that's it, you'd have saved yourself a lot of time and energy making these videos, and more importantly, saved a lot of money for a lot of Canadians buying TELUS and banks like Nova Scotia aggressively, as you recommended, but don't listen to me because I'm a clown on the internet. VDY for life, hashtag. How much was NVIDIA when you said it was too expensive at $400 or $500? Dollar yields, y'all. Hashtag dividend trap, hashtag home country bias, hashtag company I use bias. I appreciate the macro talk though. Keep doing that, but be more correct about it. Like, GDP is shit when measured per capita, as opposed to immigration, flooded skewed data. This guy is obviously taking what I say more seriously than I probably do most of the time. But the fact is if you bought BNS when I was telling you to buy it, or when I was saying it's time to be aggressive, you probably would be up 15, 20+% on it right now. Like, all the companies when I was being aggressive did very well. Like, they didn't do as well as NVIDIA, and I don't trust NVIDIA. I don't understand it. Yeah, and I think it's going to do what Tesla did. I think we're going to go through this crazy bull run. I don't think they're going to be able to meet the guidance growth. I mean, they're at guidance growth now, right? Like, we're already seeing a slowdown in what their expectations are moving forward. And there's no way it can justify a 70 to 100 times multiple when it's trading almost at the level of Apple with less than half of the revenues and like a third of the income. Like, it's not, it just doesn't look right. There's nothing about NVIDIA that looks right. Now, I don't know when I'm going to be right. It could go up forever. It could hit $1,000. I don't know. I'm just not playing it. I think it's a better short than it is a buy today. And I'm wrong. I mean, Kathy Wood sold it at the bottoms, for crying out loud. Like, there's no knowing the reality of this stuff, right? I can just look at it and say, hey, I respectively understand that I don't know where chips are going. I'd rather buy it and own it through an ETF. And if it goes the other way, I'm not stuck managing it. But my exposure to the Canadian markets isn't that big either. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Like, I talk about Canadian stocks because people love them. And I think if you're in a retirement phase, I try and speak more broadly about everything because, like, my parents, for example, in retirement are going to have more exposure to dividend companies in the Canadian economy. But because we're young and we're still in a growth phase, like, we're more oriented toward the US markets. And I've talked about this a lot, right? Like, I'm still going to be buying VDY, but the Canadian markets right now probably make up about 10 to 15% of the entirety of mine and my fiance's combined portfolios. Whereas most of our money is in tech companies, in dividend ETFs like SCHD and the S&P 500. And we also have ETFs like IEFA. We also have other ETFs that are in this other basket. I don't show the cash position here as well. I mean, we're in a position that I think is appropriate for us, but that doesn't mean it's appropriate for you. And obviously, you know, like right now, Tesla's 2.52% of our portfolio. I mean, even if Tesla in our combined portfolios drops dramatically in half from here, it's barely a blink on the radar considering I own what? Around 40 shares. And I want to scale that up. I want it to be as big as Google is at least, or Meta. I mean, Meta's pretty much our largest single stock position between the two of us. But the fact is like, I don't think watching one of my videos should exponentially make you think that that's the reality of what I'm doing personally. I just think it's good to give people the broad view of everything and let them pick whatever works best for you. It's personal finance, right? Imagine if a major chunk of the internet went down for 4 hours in North America. Yeah, I'm curious to what it would take. I don't think you could bring the internet down because it's so like, have you guys ever seen the, let me see if I can find it real quick. Global internet connection. Have you guys ever seen like the global internet connection connectivity image? I'm trying to find it here because it's fascinating when you look at the map. I don't think this is a good example of it. This one might be actually. Let me pull this up and show you guys. Oh, it didn't bring it up on an individual level. Come on, global internet map. Give this to me. Why is it like this? I want to see the image. Help me find this. If you guys search like global internet map, you're going to see this crazy interconnected web globally because like they run fiber optic cables under the ocean, right? And then when you get into individual states, like there's hubs everywhere. So it's kind of like power. You know, if a power line goes down, it might knock out a town, but because we have satellite internet now, I mean, you can take an iPhone out in the middle of nowhere and connect to satellite internet. Like there is no internet going down anymore. So, I mean, it's crazy how like, this is why we're getting into AI now, because like the global internet scale has finally reached parity almost. But the other crazy thing too is like, I don't think people appreciate that 1/3 of the entire internet or 1/3 of the entire population still doesn't have access to internet. That's another crazy fact. So, I mean, if you think tech companies have reached peak parity yet, imagine what happens when all these other countries start coming online and like the bottom half of the global economic, you know, cycle starts to catch up and we start seeing like, you know, third world impoverished countries start becoming more into becoming developing countries like we're seeing across Africa right now and a lot of other places. I mean, I still think we're in the infancy stages of this true jump in reality, right? I mean, like I said, we're going through a once in a lifetime generational shift. And that's why I think we're seeing such exponential growth in the S&P 500 and companies alike. And I just think people think it's some kind of bubble, and I think they're wrong. I think we deserve to trade at a 20 or 30 times multiple. Getting beyond that gets scary. It's just, especially when you get into these recessionary hiccups, but long term, I just don't think betting against the economy right now is a good idea when tech's doing what it's doing. I hold Tesla covered call ETF, and I did a covered call against the Tesla covered call ETF and banged. Sounds too much complication for me here. Basically, governments break up insanely big companies. Yeah, they don't break. That's another thing that I find interesting as well, right? Like, I'm surprised that like in Canada, especially, Canada is highly monopolistic. The US now is becoming hyper monopolistic, and we know that inevitably a few are going to control the many. And I'm shocked that the government isn't splitting it up more. I'm very, very surprised by that, to be honest. When you get companies trading at $3 or $4 trillion that have so much cash, they can gobble up pretty much anything and everything. And the government lets these go through. I mean, the government approved so many major acquisitions of like Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. I mean, when Microsoft is going to own like the mass majority of the gaming sector, I don't think it just makes sense anymore. I think it's better for the end consumer so long as they don't jack prices up, because they'll be able to bring prices down and make more money if they go in that direction. But there was a story of there's like 3 major bread providers. And I think those 3 major bread providers got together, like, you know, the cartel, and we're like, hey, like if we just stop competing, why don't we just all raise our prices and nobody's going to be able to say anything about it? And that's what they did. And then they got caught and had to pay a massive fine. Imagine how much shit our world would be with all this AI stuff and solar flare knockouts. Yeah, so I think if you ever look into it, solar flares aren't actually that big of a deal. People thought I was nuts when I was telling them that like the entire grid today, the entire grid, like our power grid is set up to actually pay attention to that stuff. And they have specific redundancies in place that actually stop any kind of EMP blast from knocking out like mass hardware, mass energy grids. Like it doesn't, I mean, for example, I think the coolest thing is go take one of the strongest magnets imaginable and put it up to your iPhone. Your iPhone will do nothing. Like magnets will not destroy your iPhone. An EMP blast will do nothing to most electronics today. I mean, most electronics are built to last that. I mean, could you imagine planes flying? Like they're in the upper atmosphere where they're experiencing like 5 or 10 times the amount of radiation and they don't fall out of the sky. Like an EMP blast isn't going to do anything to those things, right? I think it's kind of a myth today that, people seem to think that that's going to be a problem. I think it will be to some for certain things, but most electronics probably not. Depending on how crazy it is, but maybe I'm an idiot. I watched a few documentaries on it, so maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. So lump sum or dollar cost average of VDY and VFV. Honestly, I'm a lump sum sort of a guy, but what I like to do, and I think the most appropriate thing to do is just always have cash on the side no matter what. Always have a percentage of cash. I always leave 10 to 20K sitting around no matter what. And that's not my emergency fund. Keep in mind, this is my portfolio's emergency fund. I have cash that I don't even talk to you guys about that we just leave for mortgage costs for 6 to 12 months, all that stuff. But leave 10 grand aside no matter what in your portfolio, and then just keep cost averaging with your income, whatever percentage of your income you put to the market. Just keep buying VFV, VDY, whatever you buy. Don't stop doing it. And when the market dips by 10%, double up your contributions with the 10 grand in cash you have. And then every month, just keep putting doubling in for as long as the market keeps going down. And then if the market drops by 15 or 20, just throw as much as you can, because that's what I usually do. Like I'll just drain a huge portion of that cash. And then as the market starts to recover, just go back to your usual plan, but put a little bit extra now aside and rebuild that emergency fund back. There's a guy in Canada I follow that said that, and I think it's the most brilliant way to invest in the market, because it saves you from wicked downturns and black swan events, and it allows you to capitalize more aggressively when the market is in more of a bearish sentiment per se. But yeah, anyways, we'll finish up with a couple more comments. Microsoft is such a diverse company. One of the few stocks I'm happy holding other than my ETFs. Yeah, I'm happy. I'd be happy holding it if I own it or just own it through the S&P. Like we own some shares in it. We're not selling it, but I wouldn't be buying it up here. I don't mind holding it up here, but I don't trust it. I think it's due for a correction at some point. Compass is a huge, Game Pass is a huge advantage for those that play many games per year, but sucks for those that play 1 to 2 games. Solar flares took out most of the province of Quebec. Selector will get it in 1989. You people are too young to think. Yeah, so it's not like I said, that's something that happened 30, like again, because it's happened, they put redundancy systems in to pay attention to this stuff. Like I said, I mean, you could look it up on YouTube. I'm sure there's videos about it. Cause like I said, I've watched documentaries on like how they deal with like electrical impulse. And again, like I said, if EMPs are just electrical impulse, then like, again, go watch videos, take the strongest magnet you have in your house, put it next to your phone. Your phone will do nothing. You remember the old days in like CTRs when you put magnets up to them and it'd screw the whole screen up, and you could like wipe computer drives by just throwing like magnets on them? That doesn't work anymore. There's just like most of the parts are just not magnetic in phones, right? Like they're using gold and palladium and all these things that just don't have the same magnetic pulling on it. So it's not you're going to rip parts out of it. I mean, look at aluminum's case. It's all aluminum, like people aren't stupid like that. Again, it used to bring planes out of the skies. Planes would just fall out of the sky because radiation would affect the chips. That doesn't happen anymore, which is kind of cool. But nonetheless, folks, I did the stream a little bit earlier today. Well, like I said, I've done some research on it. I mean, it's just a matter of you're talking about data from the 1980s, and I'm talking about data of documentaries that I watched like maybe a couple years ago. Kind of reminds me too of people talking about like the fusion. Every day, every time I hear about people talking about fusion, I gut myself because they make it out like it's happening tomorrow, and it's still probably 50 or 100 years off. Fusion is something we've always been on the cusp of since I've been a kid, and it just never seems to come into fruition. But people are acting like it's happening tomorrow. And I don't think fusion matters. I think nuclear energy, all that stuff is easily just as efficient. And do you really need more than that? Because then the problem comes is like you make fusion, but then how do you diversify that energy? Because fusion reactors, they're going to start them in one place, and they're going to propel so much energy. But the problem is like unless you live close to that energy, you're going to have like a loss of energy as it travels through the, you get the loss of power as it travels through the copper wires. So, I mean, like, that's a big problem too with energy, is you get the loss of energy as the farther it has to travel, which is why it just seems easier to use like micro reactors, which are really cool and all that stuff, but who knows? It's a power station and transformers, not the EMP blast. Yeah, potentially. Man, I give up. Good luck, guys. Clown world. Yeah, it could be a clown about it. Like I said, I'm not an expert on that stuff by any metric. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be like as bad as people make it out to be, because we're getting hit all the time. I mean, you can hear it in like northern Canada. I mean, every time you see the northern lights, that's technically a form of an EMP blast, but you don't see satellites falling out of the sky, or it's just even if it's stronger, again, and if it is stronger, like I said, it's I don't see it affecting your laptop. Do you ever look into cyclical stocks? I try and put 5% of my portfolio in cyclical. I had a few winners like AEO, American Eagle stocks, cyclicals, like consumer cyclicals, outside of ET, like I said. So think of it this way, like the way I look at my portfolio today is I don't really care about individual stocks as much as I used to. Obviously, like I used to be all individual stocks. I only want to own tech companies on an individual basis, and maybe some Canadian individual stocks, but mostly I want to own ETFs like VOO, VDY. You could buy VFV if you want for the US stuff. You could buy the Qs, are really nice. If you don't want to buy individual tech companies and get a bit more diversity. But honestly, you could build a portfolio to the Qs, the VOOs, the SHDs of the worlds. Heck, even if you want to get into the VYMs, those dividend ETFs, DGRO, et cetera, et cetera. You can get into V and Q if you want more real estate exposure, but I would not buy individual stocks anymore because of the volatility that we're about to get hit with. Cyclicals are probably a bit more sustainable long run than some of these tech companies, but I think tech's the future. I want larger exposure over the next 10 to 20 years. And then for the time being, just let the ETFs carry me in case some of these explode in my face. Yeah, I mean, it's the smartest thing to do, right? I honestly think when I was buying individual stocks, it makes more sense when you're like 20 years old, if you have time to manage it, which I did. Because in my 20s, I was working on weekends as an entertainer. I had 5 days a week to study the markets. But for most people at this point, I would put, 50, 80% of your portfolio in ETFs, and, ride the rest of it on individual stocks that you believe in. That's probably the smartest thing to do, honestly. I mean, look at my portfolio, right? Like if I just put money into the S&P and not Google and not Tesla, I'd be up more today. But again, that's short term, and I'm trying to speculate on the long run here. And again, it could bite me in the ass, and it most likely will. It's 90% of people, like I think there was just a statistic that came out again where they just ran against all the mutual funds on the performance of the S&P, and I think like 98%. What was it? Let me just look it up because it's a fascinating statistic. How many mutual funds outperformed the S&P 500? They just ran an update on this. It found over the course of 1 year, 51% of actively managed funds underperformed the S&P. Yeah, there's no way that's accurate. You can't look at a 1 year. There's no way. It's got to be 5 or 10 years. But I was just looking at a 10-year. Oh yeah. So basically over the 5-year period ending 2023, the strategy. Yeah, so they were lagging the S&P 500. So about 92%, I think, were lagging the S&P 500's return of 107%, and they were coming in like 92 or something. I mean, yeah, it's just dumb to think that you can outperform long term unless you're very, comfortable. And like I said, I don't know how to explain it, right? Like I've been very fortunate, but I recognize the stupidity of trying to outpace it, and mutual funds just fail so dramatically at it. Yeah, so it's just, like I said, stick to mostly ETFs, gamble a bit because human nature wants you to gamble. So pick things you believe in and you understand, keep it very limited, and good luck. I mean, could you do a future video breaking down VDY versus XCI? They're both great. I know they are very similar with different balances, but current on your depth of thought. If you want outperformance, buy VDY. If you want income, buy both. I think both kind of pair very nicely, or you could just buy XCI for diversity. I'll do a video on it because I haven't updated them in a while. I do like both of them. I think for my parents, like for retirement, they're both beautiful, beautiful ETFs. But on that note, folks, I do appreciate you all stopping in for this quick, a little bit earlier of a stream. Not a 9 p.m. stream, just because I had, we're going out for dinner and I got to take it a little bit easier tonight. I don't know when I'm going to get back, but yeah, good luck, folks. Just keep buying stocks and buy more aggressively than ever, because you do not want to. I don't think the retirement of waiting till 65 is going to work anymore. I think if you think you're going to just work a normal job today and spend the next 35 years investing in your retirement accounts with your company match, unless you're in construction or something, you're going to get screwed. I think you're going to have a rude awakening, and you need to be a hell of a lot more diligent than our parents had to be growing up. It's so funny too, because, we were talking about that still today. Like, I mean, think about the diligence you need today. My dad kicked out of his house at 18. My mom grew up on a farm. They both bought a farm. They got married. They bought a farm, and they paid that farm off by the time they were 33 years old. And then they had us, and they waited till they paid their property off. That farm that they sold was, worth millions. And it's just hilarious because I'm like, could you imagine with no education today going and buying a farm property and paying it off by the time you're 33? You know how insane that is? Yeah, I'm 22 and I feel the same way. You're young, man. If you're paying attention, you're in a good spot. I think most people are completely unaware. I mean, you watch Caleb Hammer and it kills me inside how dumb people are. It really, like, I feel terrible and sick almost that people are that stupid financially at the age that they're at. Cause I'm like, man, if you're 20, if you're 22 and you've already figured this shit out, bro, you're fine. Like, by the time you that's what I realized. I said at 23 years old, if I could just do this until I'm 30, I'll be set. And here I am now, almost 32. I almost have a paid for property. We got tons of money in the bank, and it's set up the rest of my life. And you're the same age I was when I figured it out. So, I mean, like, I hate when people have to wait till they're in their 30s because it just gets so much harder and it takes so much more money and so much more stress. I want to enjoy my mid 30s. I don't want to wait till I'm like 45, 50 to retire. Semi-retire, I guess. I don't want to be like cocky about it, but I'll still work. I just don't want to have the weight of forceful working and stress of losing your property and stress of, if we have kids, can we afford to feed them? Like, fuck that noise. Love Caleb's content. He's doing it good for a younger generation. I agree. Hopefully slapping them straight upside the head, making people realize. Stay cool. Stay awesome, folks. Peace. I'll catch you in the next one.